Hello, everybody, and welcome to chapter 6, I believe, Scott. This is chapter 6, part 2, where we were talking about teleology. And thanks for getting this far. If you watched the first video, you probably realized we went on a little bit longer than we expected. And we're hoping to finish this chapter in what's going to hopefully be a short video. But when we get going, who knows where that'll end, you know? But essentially, Scott, I'll just call out the 4 topics we're going to discuss to bring this chapter to a close. One is synchronicity, which is one of my all-time favorites. The other is consciousness, also one of my all-time favorites. And then you make reference to 2 things, the multiverse and the universe of simulation. So we're going to do those 4 topics tonight. Isn't that right, Scott?
Exactly right. So why don't we kick it off with talking about synchronicity? It's always a fascinating phenomenon when it happens to you, you know?
Yeah, sorry. And just to give the format again, I mean, I know you know this, but the way Scott's written the book, this chapter is he's broken it into 2 points of view, right? So 2 sets of goggles to look at the world. One is the standard worldview, which essentially, if I understand you right, it basically means like modern, mainstream, conventional thinking on a certain thing. Yeah.
That's right.
And then what you're offering then is an alternative worldview, which is more in line with your sort of your heart's your intuition, your view of reality being different to the standard worldview.
It's basically the implications of the ontology and epistemology that we've already digested. And this chapter is kind of about comparing what that really means to the standard worldview, to try to highlight the differences between the different philosophies, just so that for your own understanding of what the implications of the new worldview are, you know, in regard to these different categories. So in terms
let's dive in.
Synchronicity, would you like to kind of maybe read from the book a little bit here?
But you know what I was even thinking, like, I could even say, because without reading it directly, right? Synchronicity is so dear to my heart, right? And is actually one of the cues that's opened me.
Why don't you take the alternative worldview on this one then? And
okay. Let's do that then. Sounds great.
All right. So really, it's the coincidence of 2 or more causally unrelated events, right? That's what synchronicity is. So you have these seemingly unrelated events, and you're drawing some, you're seeing some kind of causality or correlation there, and it's making you think like more deeply about the situation. So, but ascribing meaning to that is spurious in the standard worldview. As primates, we have sophisticated visual processing systems in our brains that detect patterns. Our brains can easily be tricked into detecting non-existent patterns, such as faces in the bark of a tree or the Virgin Mary in a grilled cheese sandwich. Synchronicity is a belief system conforming to preconceived expectations. So that's basically the standard view of synchronicity. Is there's really nothing here, folks. It's just your brain playing tricks on you. You're noticing things in different domains, and you're making some kind of connection between them where no connection really exists.
And before I dive into my own deep passion for synchronicity, right, I do want to sort of caveat it with, I do think it is important to bring the sword of reason into all these things, actually, you know, and there's an idea about confirmation bias, right, which is something that definitely exists, and something I notice in myself. Like even on a very basic level, if I'm reading a chapter on the golden ratio and I'm reading about the golden ratio in architecture, and then I walk around a city and I see some of the beautifully designed buildings with the golden ratio, I've already pre-primed my mind to sort of look at the world through those glasses, you know? And of course, I'm going to see the golden ratio pop up in front of me, right? There's another thing called patternicity, which could be a pitfall, is that where you see patterns everywhere and everything is a pattern, and you make links to things that aren't really there, right? So I just want to say, you know, I tread carefully when I'm dealing with synchronicities, you know.
There's also apophenia and pareidolia. They're also similar.
Cool words.
He's up on Wikipedia, and it's basically what we're talking about is seeing patterns where they might not really exist.
Mhm.
But the way I think of it is like when I go on a mushroom walk in the forest to find chanterelle mushrooms, I can look for an hour and not even see one. And then if I relax and give up and feeling frustrated, I just give up. I guess I can't find any. Maybe they're not here. And then I'll see one. And then all of a sudden they're all over the place. And I notice them all over the place. And I can't believe that I didn't see them before. But it's almost like I had to tune into their frequency
Yeah.
to see them. And in a way, it's kind of like a secret in plain sight, where it requires a perceptual shift to see the things that are really right there in front of you.
Yeah, that's almost
Synchronicity is related to that in some way, don't you think?
Yeah, like I like that one. That's a subtle nuance. It's almost an in between like, you know, some people say it's all just random chance. You're reading too much into it. It's total nonsense. Forget about it, right? That's kind of like the harsh worldview. But that idea of like, I've also had it happen where I've gone into an art museum, right? Like I remember going to the Tate Modern in London and just walking around looking at crazy art. I mean, everything from drain pipes that became art to, you know, the modern art stuff. And I spent hours in there and it did something to my mind. And like when I came back out, you have to walk across this bridge across the river when you come out of that museum. But I started to notice how beautiful the bridge was and how gorgeous the engineering was. And it was like for a moment, everything was art, you know, the fire escape down the side of the building was gorgeous, you know.
Exactly.
So
in a way, you're
shift.
seeing reality with an artist's eyes all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And you're just seeing beauty everywhere.
Yeah, and that's very similar to actually when you meditate with mandalas and sacred geometry, you begin to embody the qualities of those shapes. It's like similitude, it's like attracts like. But I would class those experiences slightly aside, although related to synchronicity. So when I'm talking about synchronicity, right, it's like, and I'll just speak personally, right, to give you an idea. It's like I've been having these thoughts, very particular, significant thoughts in my mind, right? And it could be something like I've decided to create this particular mandala based on ninefold geometry with a very specific ninefold star, which is a shape I've never made before and never made since. And I'm having a great time making this mandala. For whatever reason, I decided to make it out of 9. And then all of a sudden, a friend of mine pops up with a wallet she's embroidered that's exhibiting the exact same number, the exact same star that's stitched into her wallet that I never knew about. And I said, oh my God, her name is Trish. I said, what's the story with this star on your wallet? And she was like, oh, well, 9 is like the story of my life. It's just followed me around. I'm like, I'm one of 9 siblings, and my father too was one of 9 siblings. Yeah. And 9 is just this thing that follows me around. And I was like, do you know that this mandala is made of 9? And actually at the time she hadn't. And so for me, right, in that moment, having invested so much of my heart and soul in creating this ninefold piece of art, and then for this wallet, and it wasn't like something she just bought on holidays in the airport. Like this was a significant, meaningful, hand embroidered emblem that had deep meaning for her, right? And for those two things to come together in that moment, I've never seen anybody with any star on any wallet, you know, ever. You know, that has been just brought out into my reality.
The synchronicity was bringing them together in time, because if you
in that moment,
that conversation with Trish a month earlier or later, you wouldn't have.
It would have no relevance.
No.
Yeah, exactly. It would just be like, oh, nice wallet, whatever. Or it would be like, oh, nice mandala. But something happens where you can't avoid anymore. And it happens very deep down in you, where there's a felt communication is what it feels like for me, where there's some kind of like reflexive interaction with reality that's coming from a very, very deep place. It feels kind of very benevolent, actually. In my experiences, it's very much like an endorsement, or like being on track, or, you know, I know this is your book, you know, but I just feel so passionate about synchronicity that I've done many workshops on it actually as well. And it's something that I really feel is one of the best ways to speak to people about there maybe being more to reality than we've been trained to believe, because I think most people have had this happen is the cool thing. Most people go, whoa. And actually, you know, as I was studying it more, sometimes what happens is when you share a synchronicity for some reason, even though it sometimes is the most deeply significant thing that's happened to you personally, and you share it to somebody, it fails to land. The potency of it fails to land in the communication.
Because
And
it's
very
very,
often,
it's very personal. It's
very, very personal.
And I speculate that on the alternative worldview side, that you may have spirit guides, you may have other beings who their souls are trying to communicate with your soul, and they're finding it difficult to do that directly. And so what they do is they pass a message through the world mind for you to pick up. And they do that often through synchronicity. And so you'll find that and you'll go, oh my God, and it'll kind of open you up to perhaps to this deeper connection. And it's possible then eventually to start exploring like the extended sensory aspects where you can have clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. And those are direct information transfers from soul to soul. And they don't no longer need to go through the world mind to get to you see?
Yeah.
But failing that, if you haven't developed those abilities, then synchronicity is an obvious way to communicate to you from another soul, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's a wonderful opening for people to think that they're, you know, to get this idea that there's more to reality than the world.
Yeah. And I would just like to say, like, what I'm on this one is that if you're having experiences that are deeply meaningful for you and they touch you like in some very significant, deep way, trust them. You know, don't let your immediate peer group or culture dismiss them on your behalf, you know, because I really feel they are gifts from beyond the veil, you know. And I've also definitely noticed as I work with geometry, and I can't prove this in any way, but for some reason, and I don't know why this is the case, the more I meditate upon and the more I enter the field of rich geometry, the more amplified and apparent and the more frequent the occurrence of synchronicities happen. So it's like I tap into a field where they come easier, you know.
Now we're talking more like the mushroom walk, where you're in that field and then they start coming all the time. And I are too, and I feel like I like to be in that mode because more discoveries come to me, more insights come to me when I'm in that very active synchronicity mode. But I think that you have to have a bit of care with that, because if you go off the deep end too much and you think everything is a synchronicity, like every time the clock it has a repeating digit that it means something important. I mean, that can be true, but not every occurrence of that is a message. It just might be that it's that time of day, you know. What I'm trying to say is that if you go too far down the road of synchronicity, it like madness lies that way. So that's where the standard worldview is helpful in being able to dismiss that as just like spurious, like you're crazy. That doesn't make any sense. Forget it. Let's move along. You know?
Yeah, you are right, Scott. It is like a precarious path, you know, and it's kind of like if you have a synchronicity which you are convinced is telling you to quit your job, leave your marriage, emigrate, you know, and do it all right now, you know, if it's truthfully the call of your soul, it'll probably be as valid in 3 months' time or 6 months' time. So maybe take a pause, you know, don't do the big hammer moves just because you saw, you know, a rabbit in a window or something, you know what I mean? So, but I don't want to dismiss them either, you know, it's like, because I literally cherish when synchronicities happen, you know, and it's not something you can, it's not something that your will makes happen. That's the beautiful thing about it. They're graceful, that you're always blindsided by a synchronicity. If I go out tomorrow and say, I don't care what I have to do, but today I'm having a synchronicity, it just doesn't work that way. It's always like, whoa, wait, what? Whoa. it has a surprise element to it as well, you know, that you can't plan, you're not prepared for, and you're like, you know.
Yeah, it's a moment of opening that I think
Yeah.
has more potency the less frequent it is.
Mm-hmm.
But when it
Mm-hmm.
really is an amazing one, it really blows you away, and it
Yeah.
makes you wonder about, well, what's happening right now in the moment that I should pay attention to. What does this message really mean? You know,
Yeah.
it's not just here for me to enjoy,
Mm.
maybe, but it's also, it may be carrying a meaning. What is that meaning? And each time it's going to be different, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of looking at all of the things happening in that moment. Maybe there's something that you need to draw your attention to,
Mm.
that the synchronicity is trying to flag,
Yeah.
you know?
And I like as well just honoring them in a way where you kind of say, like, message received, you know, you honor it, you go, oh wow, amazing, I got that one. And you know, because if there is an invisible hand involved in the transmission of these messages, which I believe there is, I don't know what it is, by the way, but I definitely believe there's some kind of intelligence that's communicating with us through synchronicities. And I think it's nice to reciprocate it. You know, you don't have to say it out loud. If you're on a bus or something, people think you're mad, but just in your heart, you go like, thank you, message received, you know, it's landed, I've got it.
For me,
You
it
know,
often, when I perceive it, I start laughing because it's so obvious.
yeah,
Like, oh my God,
yeah, yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so it kind of lifts my spirits when it happens, you know.
yeah,
So I value it, but I just caution people not to go overboard with it,
yeah. You
because
get a good few with numbers, Scott, don't
yeah,
you? Like you get a lot like with your rep digits and, you know, they follow you
the
around.
number 33 is very significant to me. And, you know, I found it through my research about, like, there's 32 bones in the spinal column, and then the skull is like the 33rd. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
it's mirrored in the Scottish Rite and so on. But also, I went to this high school and the address is 33333 Golden Lantern. And I was like, what? I forgot that, you know, and I was looking through some memorabilia and I found the address of my high school. I'm like, that's funny, you know. And then it turns out I was born at 33 degrees north, 30 minutes north latitude. Um,
And
there's
then did
so
you
many
go on a,
coincidences with the number 33 in my life. It's
yeah,
crazy. But
did,
I don't
was
want to
there
go
one
too far with
block?
it either, you know, like,
Yeah, but
how
you
far
lay it
is
out, you lay it out beautifully, you know. But I think reading a blog post of yours years ago, did you go on a business trip like in your everyday life and you were doing one of your courses like teaching AutoCAD or something, and you went to the company and the company's address was like 333
yeah, it was in
Menlo
it was for
Park or
LinkedIn. It
something?
was for lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn. And I was doing recording videos in the studio.
Yeah,
And then I'm driving on Highway 33, you know, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
I go to the store Barrel 33 that sells wine. And it was just like, oh, well, it's Barrel 33 because it must be on Highway 33, right? And there were
yeah,
just
fair enough.
so many of those things that
But
happened.
was the actual number of the address of the Linda place 333? Am I making that up?
I think that might have
I
been
have
my
a
high
vague
school.
memory.
I don't remember
Okay,
the
okay,
business having that address, but
but
anyway,
it
33
makes me laugh.
follows
You
me
and
around.
33.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes me laugh. And a lot of people have a number that follows them around, you know.
yeah.
And that's kind of fun as well. I
Well,
don't take those ones too seriously, you know, but they're kind of playful.
well, like Jesus was said to have performed 33 miracles.
Live till 33
Was it
years.
33 years? I know that escape velocity from Earth is Mach 33, which is 33 times the speed of sound.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a lot of facts that I've assembled, and
Yeah.
say that it's confirmation bias, it's cherry picking facts. Those things are all also true, but there's a theme to 33 in that it represents the full scale, the full gamut, the whole thing, the whole trip,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Did,
over and
can I
over.
ask you? Can I ask you about, is there another one about 33 and the levels of magnitude and something like from the quark to the palm of your hand, like the size of a dice,
Yeah.
is like 33 orders of magnitude.
Right.
Something like that.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I'm probably quizzing you now and stuff from Secrets in Plain Sight, but I think it was like the smallest measurable atomic distance. Maybe it's a quark or something. I'm not no physicist, you know. And if you bring that to the level of like the size of a regular dice that would sit in the palm of your hand,
It's
there's
33
like 33
orders
orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
And then you go out upward, I think 33 orders of magnitude.
And middle C is 33 octaves or harmonics above the Schumann resonance, which is a very low vibration in the
planet.
Earth that comes from lightning discharges in the atmosphere. And so that's like the fundamental tone of the Earth. And then the tone that humans put in the middle of our auditory scale is 33 harmonics above that. You know? So there's a lot of beauty to be seen in these synchronicities of number, you know. I'm
like, keep cherry picking, Scott. You know what I mean? You know, because it kind of, when you get to cherry pick, you know, 1,255, you're kind of going, wow, like
you're like, I want to buy that bag of cherries. You know?
yeah, exactly. So will we keep going? I think we've sort of, I mean, we said way more about synchronicity than the one page in the book there, but it is a topic dear to our heart, you know. Have we left anything out? I don't think we have.
Not essentially. So let's move on to consciousness. And
okay.
In consciousness, we have the standard worldview of consciousness is that it's really a vexing or hard problem because we can't really explain it. How consciousness could arise from seemingly lifeless inert matter. And ultimately, it's kind of a paradox. And we usually in physics, they offer kind of a promissory note that, well, maybe one day when we understand everything about the brain, then we'll know how consciousness emerges. But until then, we're just going to use language like it emerges. It comes out of the complexity of a totally cross-circuited brain that has like more switches in it than 1,500 Milky Way galaxies. Somehow, all of that complexity is enough to just have you come out of it.
Yeah.
Right. But ultimately, that is a mystery. And people like who are materialists, like I think of Sam Harris, I put a quote in here from him. And he says, to say that consciousness emerged at some point in the evolution of life doesn't give us an inkling of how it could emerge from unconscious processes, even in principle. So he's actually calling it out.
Hang on, I didn't get that. Would you mind if I, sorry, my sort of brain didn't catch that. Would you explain that to me?
To say that consciousness emerged at some point in the evolution of life, like it emerged, doesn't even give us an inkling of how it could emerge from unconscious processes. How could consciousness emerge from parts? And he says, how could that even happen, even in principle? You know, like the standard explanation is that it's an emergent property of complexity. But he's kind of calling it out, and like Leibniz did in the 18th century, basically, when he talked about a mill and how there's all.
But it sounds like, is that quote calling bullshit on that?
It is. He's actually calling bullshit on it, but he is firmly in the materialist paradigm.
Okay, so it was just because it's in the standard. I get you. Yeah. Sorry, I got confused there. Like, so my training or my teacher, Stan Groff, says that like the standard worldview would assert that somehow consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain activity, meaning that like we've got, I don't know how many, is it 93 billion? You know me and my numbers, I'm not great. 93 billion neurons in the brain. A lot of neurons in the brain. You know, we've got all this electrical activity going on. Somehow, nobody knows how, by the way, not even the brainiest people in like neuroscience knows how consciousness is created. But the standard worldview claim is that it's actually excreted, like the way he actually uses the term, like the way the kidneys excrete urine, you know, in the same biological function. Somehow the brain excretes consciousness. And just, you know, it's just, we don't know how, but that's how it happens.
It's hilarious, though, that consciousness is relegated to excrement in the dominant paradigm.
Yeah, that's
It's
what
actually
Stan says.
relegated to an illusion by this
Yeah.
whole philosophy of reductive materialism called illusionism, that they deny that consciousness exists. And it comes from studying brains and realizing that there's nowhere in that, all that complexity, where their consciousness is nowhere in that. There's no little homunculus in there, or little man in the brain who's
we found
pulling
it.
the
We
levers.
found it. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's natural to conclude that it must be an illusion. But that whole philosophy denies your own experience of being aware.
Yeah.
Being here and now and awake and alive. It denies your own experience. And so for me, I reject illusionism, because the one thing I know is that I'm having an experience.
Yeah, you're aware.
I'm aware. That's all I really know. And to say that that's an illusion doesn't really advance the argument for me, you know?
Yeah. So let's say, so basically standard worldview more or less says we don't really know how consciousness emerges or what it is, but bear with us, and sometime in the future we will know. But for now, broadly speaking, it's an epiphenomenon of brain activity somehow.
It's either an illusion or it's excreted.
Yeah, exactly.
It's either excrement or an illusion, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think
they're not great options. They're not great options.
Let's just look at another way of looking at it, which is that I agree in the alternative worldview that consciousness appears to be paradoxical. Is your consciousness limited to the boundaries of your brain and your body? If you see the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius, then does your awareness extend at least that far, some 8.64 light years away? Astronomers have imaged the CMB, the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is the outer boundary of the visible universe. Knowing that, is your consciousness as big or bigger than the universe? Consciousness is the ultimate container with infinite capacity. Somehow, firsthand, we know that nothing can seemingly contain everything. In Big Bang theory, everything somehow sprang out of nothing 13.8 billion years ago. This only makes sense if everything is made from consciousness. You know, the Buddhist Heart Sutra is form is emptiness, emptiness is form. But you know, if everything came from nothing, it must still be nothing 13.8 billion years later. So consciousness is no problem at all. You are naturally this paradox of emptiness and form. Mind thinks consciousness is a paradox because the bounded can never fully encompass and understand the unbounded. So it's an irreducible paradox, but it's who you are. And okay, and you know nothing better than that. That's what you really know, is being aware. But we can't really understand being aware with our minds, because our minds are, you know, modulations of awareness itself, right? And I leave this section with the quote from Richard Feynman, one of my favorite quotes. I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned.
Yeah, he's amazing. Love him.
Yeah. And so that, in a way, to me, that's what consciousness is really. It's like a question that can't really be answered fully, because ultimately it is a mystery, a paradox. And I think that a mature attitude toward that is falling in love with that mystery, rather than calling it an illusion or an excrement or a hard problem that we don't know now, but eventually we will know. Eventually we will know the answer. Well,
it's very unsatisfactory.
We will never know the answer to that. It is irreducibly a mystery. Okay, and I'm cool with that. That's a beautiful thing, actually, because imagine if we could know it. Imagine if in 100 years' time they knew everything about the brain and they knew everything, and there's no mystery at all. How boring life would be without mystery, you know? And how devoid of value it would have for all the souls that come after that, who know everything and There's no mystery
Yeah.
here, you know. That's
Yeah.
not a world I want to strive to try to get to. I don't want to get to a
Yeah.
world where we know everything. I love the fact that we don't know everything and that we have to speculate about it and we have to work away at that because it gives us something to do, right?
I wouldn't mind knowing everything, like maybe like for a day or something.
I'd like to know
I'd be
more,
okay. Yeah.
More.
I mean, if somebody came to me and said like, hey, Geoff, if you take this pill, you can know everything. I'll probably take it. I'll just be honest.
But then
I'd
when
be
you
like,
come down, you'd be like, well, I knew everything, but I can't explain it to you.
That's so frustrating. I know. It's like, that's it. Yeah, I can't. Words will not do it. You know what I mean? And then the other part of it probably is you're going to spend a huge amount of your time wanting to get back there. You know, that idea. And then you have that whole attachment. And but listen, before we move on from consciousness, just one of the things I'm really loving, actually, the deeper dimensions of the entire model, and probably the thing that's driving Reality Atlas for both of us, is our view of consciousness, you know, and this idea that like consciousness is everything, you know. And sometimes I say that to my friends and they kind of go like, oh, what are you talking about, Geoff? What do you mean consciousness is everything, you know?
It's like, I've still got to pay my rent, you know?
Yeah, exactly, which is a fair point. But I have to say, like, in my deeper moments, you know, the idea that like all that actually is consciousness makes sense to me. And this principle, I love the Hermetic principles. They're very, very cool. If you haven't checked them out, 7 Hermetic principles. And I think the first one is like that all is mind, the universe is mental, you know. And so I know mind has loads of different uses, but basically everything that is consciousness, and the only thing that is consciousness. And I'm quite new to the penny dropping here on these things, you know, but it's so rich worldview that I'm really enjoying it, you know. And it's kind of like this idea of like the relative, the dance between the relative and the absolute. It's a major trip for me, you know what I mean? And that the fact that we can't actually comprehend the absolute in the relative. That's the irony you're talking about, you know. And as long as we're bounded, we won't be able to really feel that all is consciousness, you know.
I think it's captured in the notion of non-duality in the phrase not two and not one.
Yeah,
it's a paradox. It's not just the absolute and the relative, and it's not just the absolute, because there is a relative. So it's like there's a fundamental mystery, a paradox there, and the best we can do is kind of give it a label and call it something that
absolutely.
We usually do.
Like
when we have a mystery, we call it, well, we'll call that pi. Okay. And we'll call that one I. We'll call that one the square root of -1. Okay. We don't really understand it, but we'll call it that. The same thing with
now it's a thing.
Yeah, with
all of a sudden,
charge, with light, with matter. We're like, we don't really understand how a proton works at all. There's got all these quarks in it. We have no idea. We'll just call it a freaking proton, okay, and leave it at that.
It's really good branding, actually. It's really good branding the mystery, you know. But I just wanted to also give a little bit of airtime to that amazing quote that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. I think that's probably one of my all-time favorite mantras, you know. And it's the reason I like it is that in my kind of like deeper meditative moments, that koan, I call them koans, I don't know if it is, but like it's kind of like a koan for me is like, it's like a trigger of consciousness that lets you reflect on a principle of existence, you know. And so sometimes I'll go, oh my God, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And I'll really get it, and I'll be really deep, and I'll be like floating in that whole big vibe. And then I'll wake up the next day and I'll be like, what was I thinking about form as emptiness? No, was it emptiness is form, or was it form? I can't. No, I had it now. I had it, and I'll forget it. It's like my mind contracts where I haven't expanded to include that principle. And then other times, I don't know. It's probably just as I go deeper into meditation or whatever, I go, but of course course form is emptiness.
But we
And
have that,
emptiness
we
is
have
form.
that kind of interplay in our daily lives when we have to go into the mundane and the practical, and we have to pay the rent, we have to do this and that. And so, we're form, it's all form. And then we have these, we go on a retreat, we listen to the Reality Atlas or whatever it is, or we're doing something, and we're uplifted, and we realize, oh, that makes so much sense, I get it. And form is emptiness, but then, like, on Monday morning, you're going to be back in form again, you know what I mean?
And you're scratching your head going, oh, it's so frustrating because I had it worked out, you know.
But I think the wisdom is to accept that is the natural course of things. There's going to always be this interplay between the sacred and the mundane. You can't just live in the sacred 100% of the time.
And that mantra is a brilliant one. So treat yourself to that mantra, because it will land on you where you'll click and go, oh, I get it. Then you forget it again. And then, it's one of my favorites. I just wanted to sort of honor it, So shall we move on to the multiverse, which is not as big a kind of a ticket for me than, say, synchronicity and consciousness, like, I've heard of the multiverse. I don't really get it, but I think maybe you can take this one.
Doctor Strange and the multiverse, Marvel stuff is popular, and so people understand the idea of like different realities, different universes. But this is a physics concept that there may be an infinite number of universes that are similar. Some of them close to us are similar to our universe, but then the farther away, they're very different. And this idea was floated, I think, to explain fine-tuning, for example, which we're going to talk about in the next chapter or in more detail. But it's in my view, it's kind of a cop-out of kind of explaining away the total improbability of our universe having all of these physical constants finely tuned to support life by saying, well, we're just in the one universe where that's all perfect. In all the other universes, maybe there isn't even another one universe that has everything tuned perfectly. And so we get like no stars, or we get like no DNA, or we get, whatever. There's all these limitations that they know would be the problem there in that universe where that constant was tweaked just a little bit.
This is the idea of like, our universe is like the successful offspring of like, two parent universes, and like there's a million infinite other universes where the constants didn't line up for life to occur, so it just didn't happen. It leaves me pretty flat, the whole multiverse thing. I don't want to claim I'm informed about it, so like if I'm coming across as ignorant, forgive me. But until I get something that's compelling around it, my reality envelope hasn't expanded to include compelling takes on multiverse yet.
So the multiverse is a physics idea that kind of is a explanatory mechanism, but it's not falsifiable, which means that we can't make an experiment that would either prove or disprove it, because we have no evidence of multiverse action happening here. Doctor Strange hasn't opened a portal and come through and said, hey, I'm from another universe or something. Until we see that, then we have no evidence of it, and so it's not falsifiable, which is essentially a requirement for science. To really, but that doesn't stop them from using it as a justification for fine-tuning. And also, as a side note, dark matter and dark energy have never been experimentally verified, although they've done more than 50 experiments that have turned up no results, no positive proof of either of those phenomena. And they are also unfalsifiable, because supposedly dark matter and dark energy don't interact at all, or only extremely weakly interact with our universe or our normal matter. And so to me, it's just a justification for the fact that the theory of gravitation doesn't really work. That it only accounts for some 4 or 5% of the total picture of energy and mass in the universe. And so
Fascinating.
it's fascinating that in order to justify the standard model, they come up with unfalsifiable explanations. And in the alternative worldview, I state that nothing violates the principle of parsimony more than the idea of a multiverse. You know, like Occam's razor, where the simplest explanation is usually the right one. We're violating that in the biggest way possible by saying there's an infinite number of physical universes out there. Okay. I mean, that you can't violate that more.
I get you. Yeah.
But
It's
there's no proof of that. And it can't really be a valid justification of a theory to come up with something that's like unfalsifiable and violates Occam's razor more than anything can ever conceivably violate it.
yeah.
It's
It's
usually held up as a kind of a useful tool to find the right answer, because the universe is.
Or is it held up as a criticism to sort of make the fine-tuning, which is exquisitely unique and remarkable, and I would say miraculous in our reality, that they say, oh, it's no big deal because there's an infinite amount of universes where that didn't happen. And this is just one out. So eventually there'll be one universe where this will happen.
Right. And that's also used in the theory of evolution, which is the idea that there's no guiding hand there. And so we're just going to say there's all these extra hundreds of millions of years for this to happen. So no wonder we have this wonderful complexity when we just imagine a huge sea of time. And so that's going to be the solution is we're going to get lost in time like that. With enough time, anything could happen. Well, actually, in some cases, like protein folding, you know, there's a paradox called Levinthal's paradox, I think it is, where there's so many degrees of freedom in the way a protein can fold up and form an actual three-dimensional protein, that there are more possibilities than that could be explored than the age of the universe. Like if a protein was exploring all of those possibilities, like a million a second, it would still we would still never get the protein to fold correctly given the lifetime of the universe. And yet the protein folds up right away perfectly every time.
It's incredible.
And so it's hard to explain how that happens, you know?
But I love those things, Scott. I mean, that's a kind of, we're getting close to the fine-tuning chapter, which is an epic one. But just to, I'm just going to sort of bring you on, if that's okay, Scott, you know, so can I read the closing line? Because I love this. The hard problem of fine-tuning is no problem once we understand that the universe is alive and minded, you know. I love that.
Yeah, minds purposely fine-tune by their very nature. They do. Like you select, if you're presented with choices, you're going to select the one that's optimal for you.
Yeah, of course.
And naturally, you don't need to have a degree in physics to do that. You're just like, I like that one, you know, it's a better choice. You know? And so I think minds at all levels do that to support a better environment for playing, for exploring, for having more complexity, more fullness. It's just a natural outcome of being a mind, of wanting to have a better outcome wherever possible. So anyway, I'm up on my soapbox here, so I'm going to get down.
No, this is great. That's what we're doing, Scott. You know, it's like we are at the final topic, you know, which is simulation, you know, universe as simulation. So I suppose we can't get into this one without talking about my favorite movie of all time, which is The Matrix. Of many books up there on The Matrix. You know, if anybody's familiar with that movie, it's a wonderful story about how, you know, there is a construct that we could become trapped in that's kind of being controlled by forces outside the Matrix that are letting us all play out lives of sort of happy delusion, oblivious to what's really going on. And some people believe that that is the case. Isn't that right, Scott?
Yeah, in a way. I know that there's a philosophical paper by Nick Bostrom, a philosopher, who wrote this in 2003, and he floated the idea of the universe as a computer simulation made by our descendants who are now simulating their ancestors. And so they're simulating us for some reason. And we are that simulation. Okay. And this philosophy gained a lot of traction. It's very popular. For example, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon Musk have publicly, stated that they believe in this simulation hypothesis, and that it's a thing, that a lot of people are buying into. And for example, one of the things that could be useful in explaining is fine tuning, or things like how in a total solar eclipse, when you have the moon disk perfectly cover up the sun disk, it's a miraculous thing that they're the same exact size as seen from the surface of the earth. And if you pause to think about that for a second, the moon has to be the right size and the right distance from earth, and the earth has to be the right distance from the sun for those things to line up perfectly. And there's no other planet in our system that even comes close to that. And yet it's perfect right now during the time when intelligent biological life has developed on this planet for us to perceive this great thing, this great coincidence. And I would call that, if I believed that this was a simulation, I would call that an Easter egg. It's something made by a video game developer as a kind of nod, as a kind of signature, as a cool thing, like, hey, look at what we coded, this cool fact with the moon covering up the sun perfectly. And I think that if it really was a video game, they would have signed it. We would find the logo of their company up there somewhere. They wouldn't be able to resist that temptation ultimately to have. And I would really worry if we found like a corporate logo up there, be like, oh my God.
Can I jump in, Scott, here? So just because, like, the sun moon total eclipse is like one of the most beautiful coincidences, by the way, that you could imagine, and it's the easiest one to start with, and arguably the most beautiful. But just hearing your argument on the simulation, are you saying that some people claim that beautiful relationship, that it's just perfectly lined up to be exactly the same size in the sky, is evidence that it's a simulation?
No, I have not seen that. But what I'm saying is that something like that would be explainable if we lived in a simulation, because it would have been, it kind of signals the signature of consciousness, an intent, a design on the world.
So all the stuff we love then, like the fine tuning, the constants, the relationship between the weak force and the strong force and all that kind of good stuff, that also could be used to suggest that the world is a simulation. By the way, we're on the side of the fence that believes it's not a simulation. True? I mean, just checking in with my buddy here. Because we, even though it's a very appealing idea, and a lot of these sort of principles of existence are uncanny in terms of their precision, and like, we're going to blow our minds in the next chapter, I know, but I'm just trying to get to, how do people then interpret that as we're in a simulation? It's all so perfect, it has to be manufactured by an outside agent. Is that essentially what the simulation brigade would be claiming?
I believe so. And it also would be the religious mind would see that as evidence of God's handiwork, organizing things in a perfect way, that when we see it, we notice that there's a signature of consciousness there. And so we'd have to explain that, well, that's God's will, or that's the programmers of the simulation made it. But what I see this whole argument is more about, it's more about the kind of cultural times that we're in, that computing is the primary metaphor of our age. And if you just look at the past, like clock making was a really big deal in centuries past. Getting accurate chronometers was essential to measuring longitude. and there were like big prizes that were set up, and it was very, very important. And in England, when the Industrial Revolution happened and they made railways, everything had to be on the clock. Everything was, they were prided themselves that the train arrived on time, and that all the workers went to the factory on time. And that's why now you have to go to work on time, because of that fascination with clockwork. Okay, so in that day and age, they would have proposed that there was a blind watchmaker who organized everything behind the scenes. And so their metaphor was different, because their technology that they had was based on measuring time. And now our technology is based on manipulating information. So our primary metaphor would be that this whole universe must be inside that computer.
I get you. Yeah. Can I ask something now, but controversial then, right? So it's a bit along the lines of, you were saying there, you might have like the computer fans believe in a simulation, but also kind of people who would be religiously minded, right? So I would sort of regard myself as quite non-religious. You know, I'm a pretty standard Irish kid that lapsed from the conditioning of the Catholic Church of my youth, you know. No big problem with the church. I still like a whole load of the Christian myths or whatever, but I wouldn't be religious in any way. I wouldn't go to mass or practice any of the rituals or be involved in any religious community, right? But there seems to be a part of, I think, the Christian movement, and particularly the conservative side of it, adopts the term intelligent design to prove that God exists and he's made the universe, right?
Yeah.
But then I kind of think, right, like if I'm just really honest, right, with myself, when I look at the patterns of order that are all around us, and the beautiful proportions and ratios that you know, give form to the daisy and to the rose and to the apple and to the planets in the solar system, those things do lean me towards believing that there is a great intelligence in the creative principle itself. I don't use the word God for it, you know, but I sort of use the word like some huge intelligence, way bigger than me, is operative.
But it's very similar
creation.
to the religious belief then, that there's something bigger than you that did it. And so it's really no different than saying that's God. But I guess what I'm saying is that, yeah, there are different layers of the onion, different scales. There's bigger and there's smaller, but all of it is awareness. And it's no different than the awareness that you have right now as you're listening to me speak. That is awareness. That is God. But through a different layer of the onion, a different level of scope, in charge of more. Like at the human level, you know, you have a certain scope, a certain area that you can act in, right? If you were the sun, then you would have a different scope, right? If you were in charge of the solar system, or in charge of the galaxy, or in charge of, you know, then you'd have a different scope. But ultimately, all of those actors are fictional, and they're all awareness. Okay, that's different than saying, oh, it's all somebody else. It's somebody else who's not me.
I get you.
You know, it's recognizing, no, that is you, but not under the same limitations that you have right in this experience as being a human. So I don't know, there's a subtle difference there than just saying it's all God.
Yeah, well, I get a bit freaked out when I go, like, I can go, oh, there's an intelligent design, you know, there's a great intelligence in the creative principle. And then I see some people that would have very, very different views and values to me, kind of saying, whoa, that's really close to what I think on a certain strand, you know. So it's a little unnerving for me.
You should be going to math. Sounds like.
It's like, I don't know, is it like opposites attract at some stage, you know? But I mean, I shouldn't judge people, but you know, I mean, it's for me, you know, normal to go out and spend an evening in a crop circle, you know, and open up to come what may, you know.
Well, I guess one of the differences is that in this new worldview, it's fine to look at everything that science says about it. to learn everything
Mhm.
this Neil deGrasse Tyson says about it, everything Elon Musk
Mhm.
is talking about. That's all fair game. It's all good. It's all new information. It's different points of view.
Yeah.
It's all worthwhile. Whereas in religion, it's like, well, we only have the one book, and it's
Yes.
all in the one book. But what are you looking
Yeah.
outside of this book for? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I find that it's like a medieval belief system, or that it gives comfort to a lot of people, and that's their prerogative. But
Yeah.
I I went through that as a preteen and teenager, and ultimately I find it unsatisfying because I had more questions. I had a
Mhm.
greater curiosity
Mm.
than this book that was written thousands of years ago could answer. And
Mhm.
so I'm glad, because then I can read thousands of books and keep learning and exploring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's more open-ended than having a book of answers. I think it's
Mhm.
more about a process of questioning
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
leads
Yeah.
you to kind of epiphanies over your lifetime.
Yeah. It's kind of funny as well. It's almost like the universe having a bit of a comedy show, where I would claim myself as being a bit of a renegade, breaking away from the conditioning of my culture, opening my mind up to like different worldviews and, trying to expand my consciousness in every way I can. I've done all nights, thises and that's, and retreats and workshops and mandalas and psychedelics. And then I find myself kind of like lining up with like a really conservative religious group, and I'm kind of going, oh no, like how did
Where,
that happen?
where did
I
I
didn't see
go
that
wrong?
coming.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
happened?
I'm sure there's other elements of the group that I wouldn't line up with if I looked into it more. It's just the intelligent design thing I didn't even know was a religious thing. And it's,
Yeah.
when I do look at like the patterns of order in the universe, that's the thing that floats my boat the most.
Yeah.
I
Well,
kind of like,
what we have in
wow.
common with religious folks is that we're advocating a larger worldview than can be explained by studying the visible domain.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
we're
The
admitting to the existence of a soul, which
Yeah.
scientists would say, well, we must be religious people. I don't feel religious. This isn't a system of belief that I'm trying to get you to buy. I'm just presenting ideas
I
for
don't feel
you to
religious
think
either.
about.
Yeah. I think we've
There's
hit
no.
something nice here though, Scott. Like it's almost like we're saying we like science and we dig it, right? Like I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, him banging on about the Tesseract or some great. I mean, I don't think there's anything that I don't dig that he says. Probably deep down is maybe he has thinks a little bit different about stuff somewhere. But listening to him is cool. But if science claims that like all that exists is divisible and what we can weigh and measure, there would be a huge lack in that for me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be able. So it's kind of like I dig science, but it's not all of the picture for me.
Yeah,
But also
it's
on the
very, I feel the
religious
same.
side,
I feel the same. It's
the
like it's
religious
great
side, it's
for what
like,
it is. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff then on the religious side. I'm only catching this now because I normally, oh no, religion, oh no, not me. I'm so beyond religion. But actually, maybe what I'm catching here is that maybe that thing you identified beautifully as us having in common with religious people is our acknowledgement of the soul and the invisible and the spirit world. Call it what you like. That's just, yeah, I'm only catching that formally now. That's kind of nice. So it's almost like we belong to science but not fully, and we belong to religion but not fully. So and I feel we've fallen into something that's outside both of those groups. It includes a bit of both, but it doesn't include all of both. Do you know what I mean? It's
Well,
like
we're kind
we
of
can't
reacting. We're
drink
reacting to
all the
this.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, we're kind of dealing with the fallout of how science, in its very foundation, it had to split off from religion, because previously religion had all of the answers, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very dogmatic about everything, and then science had to distance itself from that and say, well, we're going to just study what we can weigh and measure, and then you guys are in charge of all that BS that we can't weigh and measure.
Yeah.
And so that division was made, and science, it was great for science because then look at what's happened in the last 300 years about learning everything about the physical world. It's been very helpful for our
Fantastic.
species.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Super
Very
great.
helpful.
But we kind of threw out too much with that, because science can't, by its very definition, it can't investigate areas that we can't weigh and measure. And yet those domains do exist. So it would be helpful to use some of that scientific thinking to interrogate these unseen realms and not just dismiss them, but actually expand the scope of science to look at these areas without dismissing them.
Yeah.
To look at the near-death experiences, to look at
coincidence,
to
synchronicity
communicate with souls of your dearly departed, to look at a lot. And I know there are some authors like Rupert Sheldrake who's kind of, bringing that in, trying to bring that into the fold of science and saying science would be much more interesting if we included these questions. And I agree with them. That is so true.
Love Rupert
But it's
Sheldrake,
a different way of thinking about everything that requires, it does require a different worldview in order to be able to even play in that area.
Yeah. I like that. I kind of like what we caught there, to be honest, So where are we now? We're just, we're trying to,
well, I want to
sort of said it there. Like,
well, I want to give you the last bit of the universe as a simulation. And my argument about that is that, I'll just read this section to you.
Yeah, cool.
So the idea that we might be living in a simulation is interesting from the standpoint of science fiction and video games. However, if our descendants are running this simulation that we are supposedly living inside of, what is the computer that is running the simulation made of? And how are the laws governing it any different than those in the simulation? Couldn't that, quote, real world where the powerful computer running the simulation is located also be running inside of another simulation within another computer in an even more real world? This argument can go on recursively forever, and we never get any closer to discovering what qualities are more real about each successive universe. The argument collapses, therefore, in a reductio ad absurdum type fallacy. Because, and I kind of poke a hole in that theory right there by showing that if our universe is simulated, what's to say that that universe isn't simulated? And what's to say that universe isn't simulated? And what is different about the simulation versus the real world? Is there anything different? What do we gain by going into the real world? What is real about the world? What is more real? Isn't it just your own experience? Isn't it just the experience that you're having? That is real. And so all of this talk of simulations can be cut out.
Yeah,
it's not,
I love it. I love
true.
what Scott.
It's not necessary.
All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. And we see you in the next video.